Well, hello, class. This is Dr. George Hillman. I'm very excited to welcome you to EML 335, which is Personal Assessment Ministry Vision. And one of the core assessment instruments that we do in this course is the IDAC Career Match. Now, I was introduced to the IDAC Career Match through another professor at another seminary who had told me about this instrument, and it has personally impacted me. This is my instrument when I have a student in my office who is struggling with what do I need to be when I grow up? I don't know what my next direction needs to be. This is the instrument that I go to. I even have used this instrument even recently with my own daughter who's graduating college as we're starting to think about next steps. And I've gone through the training myself, and I really love this instrument. But I want to introduce you to John Bradley, because John Bradley is going to be the instructor for this next set of modules as you go through the IDAC. And so, John, I'd love for you just to tell very briefly about yourself and talk about how you got involved in doing this type of assessment.
Well, George, thank you. It's truly an honor to join with you as you reach out to students. I have to say that deep in my heart has always been the training and motivation of students preparing for ministry. This is the bottom line. And as we are training for future ministry, this is standing in the gap and being prepared. So let's say that this training is going to provide a paradigm of how to not only understand ourselves, but to understand those to whom we wish to minister. And that is so, so important. So just a little snapshot, little thumbnail of my history. Way back in 1976. Were you born then, George? Okay. Back in 76, I sensed a call from God to go to seminary for this specific purpose of discerning what the Word said about the nature of man, the nature of woman, and their life's work. In those days, there was virtually nothing from a Christian perspective that discussed aptitudes and calling and choosing vocation and so on. And so I went with that purpose. And yes, I did consider Dallas. However, Western agreed to flex their schedule so that it would adapt to my needs. And I really appreciated Dallas's program, but they weren't exactly that flexible to say, hey, you can come and just pick and choose and we'll work with you. Okay, so going through the program, it answered my prayer. And it was a Old Testament survey class. And during the class, we were studying Exodus, and there it was, Exodus 31, the building of the tabernacle. God spoke to Moses and said, I have these plans. You're going to build something you've never heard of. And chapter 31, verse 6, in the hearts of all who are skillful, I, God, have put skill. So that was it. Bingo. God claimed to have predetermined traits and aptitudes for each person for a task that he had predetermined. And, we think about building the tabernacle. These were the primo craftsmen, the top of the line, not just some rookie. So not only were they innately gifted, but they also had years of experience. So it's tying those two together. And certainly seminary education, hopefully, is providing that layer of training on top of the gifting. Okay, so there it was. Now, during this seminary time, a certain professor who was a doctorate from Dallas, by the way, studied under Dr. Howard Hendricks. His name was Grant Howard. he was Mr. Leadership at Western Seminary. And so I approached him as a seminary student very humbly. I said, Dr. Howard, would you be willing to join all of your insights about leadership with my insights about aptitude assessment? And much to my amazement, he said yes. And a long history came out of that, where together we carved out a curriculum, and that became the foundation of IDEC. And he became my business partner, and started a long history. And that was, we finally launched our partnership back in 78, 79. And then in 1980, IDEC was formally established with an office, and the rest is history. Now, Career Match came from a research grant, over a $500,000 research grant, to take all the systems and instruments that we were using, most of them paper pencil, and put them together in a computer-aided assessment, sortment, and scoring process. And so that was completed in 1984. And it's served thousands and thousands and thousands since then, coast to coast, even in Europe and in Canada. So that, you know, that's the history. Is there anything more that you recall that I should be?
It's just, it's your heart. I mean, it's your heart of helping people understand how God has uniquely crafted them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as we're going into this introduction to level 1, and then we'll also have an introduction to level 2. So level 1 is the first day, level 2 is the second day. I want to present something that your students may not be aware of. They're possibly thinking, I need to learn the complexities of how the instrument works and how to interpret the results. Yes, the training's going to do that. However, it's also very important to point out that we're dealing with a human being, and this human being has different levels of receptivity to advice. And so you, the counselor, need to be tuned in to how receptive is this person to receiving information. You're going to totally fail if all you're thinking about is dumping the data on the person and maybe praying and blessing them, and off they go. You are not going to be successful. There are about 15% of individuals who will not benefit from advice or counsel, and you need to sort that out. Now, during the training, I want to alert you to pay particular attention to lessons we have learned on how to prepare the client to be taught. There's some very key things that just flow from the information, the actual printouts themselves. The instructions are not written there. I'm just giving you the coaching through the training, and there'll be several principles. Now, if you do this, you will gain a much more receptive individual rather than just rush through the information. Obviously, we want to be listening, but we also want to be probing and drawing the person out. So I think George, for level 1 and 2, for level 1, I think that's probably the best intro that I can give on what to be looking for that perhaps material may not be mentioning.
Right. We're looking forward to jumping in and starting level 1, and then class, we're going to be at the end of level 1. We'll jump back in and we'll do another brief introduction to the start of level 2. Thanks, John, for taking the time.
You bet. Thank you, George.